Strict German economy was the rule at his table, and I think that the dread of a frequent guest at his bachelor's table contributed not a little to my being so promptly sent away to a distant garrison. The next day I took leave of the general, and started for my destination. Chapter 3 The Little Poet. The little fort of Belogorsk lay about 40 versts from Orenburg. From this town the road followed along by the rugged banks of the Aryaik. The river was not yet frozen, and its lead-colored waves looked almost black contrasted with its banks white with snow. Before me stretched the Kyrgyz steppes. I was lost in thought, and my reverie was tinged with melancholy. Garrison life did not offer me much attraction. I tried to imagine what my future chief, Commandant Myrnov, would be like. I saw in my mind's eye a strict, morose old man, with no ideas beyond the service, and prepared to put me under arrest for the smallest trifle. Twilight was coming on. We were driving rather quickly. "Is it far from here to the fort?" I asked the driver. "Why, you can see it from here," replied he. I began looking all round, expecting to see high bastions, a wall, and a ditch. I saw nothing but a little village, surrounded by a wooden palisade. On one side 3 or 4 haystacks, half covered with snow, on another a tumble-down windmill, whose sails, made of coarse lime-tree bark, hung idly down. "But where is the fort?" I asked, in surprise. "There it is yonder, to be sure," rejoined the driver, pointing out to me the village which we had just reached. I noticed near the gateway an old iron cannon. The streets were narrow and crooked, nearly all the izbas were thatched. I ordered him to take me to the commandant, and almost directly my kibitka stopped before a wooden house, built on a knoll near the church, which was also in wood. No one came to meet me. From the steps I entered the anteroom. An old pensioner, seated on a table, was busy sewing a blue patch on the elbow of a green uniform. I begged him to announce me. "Come in, my little father," he said to me, "we are all at home." I went into a room, very clean, but furnished in a very homely manner. In one corner there stood a dresser with crockery on it. Against the wall hung, framed and glazed, an officer's commission. Around this were arranged some bark pictures, representing the taking of Kostrin and of Ochakov, the choice of the betrothed, and the burial of the cat by the mice. Near the window sat an old woman wrapped in a shawl, her head tied up in a handkerchief. She was busy winding thread, which a little, old, one-eyed man in an officer's uniform was holding on his outstretched hands. "What do you want, my little father?" she said to me, continuing her employment. I answered that I had been ordered to join the service here, and that, therefore, I had hastened to report myself to the commandant. With these words I turned towards the little, old, one-eyed man, whom I had taken for the commandant. But the good lady interrupted the speech with which I had prepared myself. "Ivan Kuzmich is not at home," said she. "He is gone to see Father Gerasim. But it's all the same, I am his wife." "Be so good as to love us and take us into favor." "Sit down, my little father." She called a servant, and bid her tell the Uriadnik to come. The little, old man was looking curiously at me with his one eye. "Might I presume to ask you," said he to me, "in what regiment you have deigned to serve?" I satisfied his curiosity. "And might I ask you," continued he, "why you have condescended to exchange from the guard into our garrison?" I replied that it was by order of the authorities. "Probably for conduct unbecoming an officer of the guard?" rejoined my indefatigable questioner. "Will you be good enough to stop talking nonsense?" the wife of the commandant now said to him. "You can see very well that this young man is tired with his journey. He has something else to do than to answer your questions. Hold your hands better. And you, my little father," she continued, turning to me, "do not bemoan yourself too much because you have been shoved into our little hole of a place. You are not the first, and you will not be the last. One may suffer, but one gets accustomed to it." For instance, Shvabrin, Alexei Ivanich, was transferred to us 4 years ago on account of a murder. Heaven knows what ill luck befell him. It happened one day he went out of the town with a lieutenant, and they had taken swords, and they set to pinking one another, and Alexei Ivanich killed the lieutenant, and before a couple of witnesses. Well, well, there's no heading ill luck. At this moment the Uryadnik, a young and handsome Cossack, came in. Maximich, the commandant's wife said to him, "Find a quarter for this officer, and a clean one." "I obey, Vasilisa Igorovna," replied the Uryadnik. "Ought not His Excellency to go to Iwan Poljayev?" "You are doting, Maximich," retorted the commandant's wife. "Poljayev has already little enough room, and, besides, he is my gossip, and then he does not forget that we are his superiors." "Take the gentleman. What is your name, my little father?" "Petar Andreevich." "Take Petar Andreevich to Semyon Kuzov's." "The rascal let his horse get into my kitchen garden." "Is everything in order, Maximich?" "Thank heaven. All is quiet," replied the Cossack. "Only Corporal Prokhorov has been fighting in the bathhouse with the woman Alstinia Pegulina for a pail of hot water." "Iwan Ignatievich," said the commandant's wife to the little one-eyed man, "you must decide between Prokhorov and Alstinia which is to blame, and punish both of them, and you, Maximich, go, in heaven's name." "Petar Andreevich, Maximich will take you to your lodging." I took leave. The Uryadnik led me to an izba, which stood on the steep bank of the river, quite at the far end of the little fort. Half the izba was occupied by the family of Semyon Kuzov, the other half was given over to me. This half consisted of a tolerably clean room, divided into two by a partition.